Hello, beautiful souls. I'm your host, Nicole Neshi, and welcome to the Intuition Age. My intention for this podcast is to cultivate a sacred space where we can collectively evolve into higher states of conscious and self-awareness. I believe that the sustenance and purpose of our being is already located within the depths of our souls. We just have to rediscover and realign with it. It's time to go inward to find all the answers, clarity, and knowledge we seek. So let's journey within. Hey everyone, it's me, Nicole. I am so excited for this episode. I have Alyssa Barrios, spiritual business healer, here, and we will be discussing Reiki. That's right. My first energy healing modality, one that I practice clinically and personally, will finally be discussed on the show. Reiki is an ancient healing method that manipulates energy flow in the body. It releases stagnant emotions from the body tissue and the energetic field. Reiki heals on various levels: the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. The actual technique originated in Japan in the early 20th century, but Reiki is said to be a universal life energy that exists within all beings. Since its inception, Reiki has expanded beyond traditional practices. There is believed to be anywhere between 5 to 25 Reiki adaptations existing right now. And based on my own personal knowledge of frequencies, I believe we all bring forth an individualized approach to our energetic practices. And that is what fascinates me the most about Reiki and other energy healing modalities. It is what really inspired me to record this episode with Alyssa today. You may meet thousands of Reiki masters, all at different points in their journeys, that experience Reiki and energy differently. How we consume and transfuse energy is unique to us. It really instigates awareness into who we are as energetic beings. Reiki was such a foundational tool and technique for my energy-based healing practice. It really developed my understanding of the human biofield, chakra system, and universal life force energy. Though my practices and therapies have since evolved to include alternative energy modalities that are in greater alignment with my frequencies and spiritual gifts right now, Reiki was pivotal to my spiritual development. And this episode really illustrates just how magical the realm of energy work is to our growth and well-being. Hi, Alyssa. Welcome to the Intuition Age. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being here. So
of course, I'm excited.
to start, we're talking about Reiki today, which I'm super excited about. Why don't you just start by telling us about yourself first off, and then how you got into Reiki?
I love Reiki so much. Even just saying the word Reiki
Like
makes
energizes
me feel so
you.
good. Yeah. So I got into Reiki probably about 2 years ago. I found a Reiki practitioner, and at that time I was so desperate for some healing that actually was going to be sustainable and work. I was finding that I would go do like my yoga, I would do therapy, I even tried going to church. And we'll probably talk about my journey a little bit, but nothing was seeming to stick. I kept getting into these bad consequences, and I really was desperate for help. And again, I had done the yoga teacher training, so I had knowledge of mindfulness and breath work and eating clean, right? Like I had all of these tools, but still something was missing. And so I found a Reiki practitioner and immediately loved her energy. And she was just someone that I wanted to embody. She was so free and happy and herself, and swore still at the same time. So I was like, cool, a spiritual healer who also swears. Like this is, yeah, right. Like who says bad words a little bit. And so I just felt really comfortable with her. And then I found the Reiki with her and immediately became hooked. Reiki meditations were just something I had never experienced before. And I didn't want to let it go. So I did my Reiki trainings and now I'm here
Mm.
activating other Reiki practitioners and sharing this magical gift. So it really just fell in my hands and I'm grateful to have it literally in my hands. Um, as that's where
Reiki
Reiki really is.
symbolism.
Yeah. So if that answers your question, that's how I found
Mhm.
Reiki. I was desperately looking for some healing that actually was sustainable and stuck with me, which was the Reiki.
And then now let's discuss your present moment. How are you then integrating Reiki into the lives of others?
Wow, I feel like I bring Reiki everywhere I go. Like even at the grocery store, I'm like, I'm Reikiing them right now. I'm sending them healing and positive vibes. But for my business aspect and for my social media platform, I am right now really empowering others to know what Reiki even is. I feel like people don't understand this powerful healing tool that is completely available for you without having to do extensive amount of studying or change anything about your life. You really don't. You just have to understand what it is. And that's pretty much what I'm doing. I'm really talking about Reiki, sharing my experiences. But something I'm also doing that's super exciting is teaching healers who have the Reiki how to also offer the Reiki and sell the Reiki. So I do a little bit of both. I bring the Reiki into people's life for the first time, or I help Reiki practitioners remember the power of the Reiki and build a business off of it. So that's what I do present and so grateful.
Well, that's amazing. And thank you for offering such an incredible service into the world and bringing such light into the lives of so many people. And I do sometimes think it is a
Thank you.
remembrance. No, no problem. I do think it's a remembrance because when I got my Reiki level 1 years ago, like almost a decade now, I took a few years in between each level of Reiki before I got my level 2 and then my master's. But yeah, it was almost like I needed that initial healing. I needed to connect with like the Reiki energy, just attune to that universal energy. But then it's not that I forgot, but I wasn't really integrating it into my life until I got Reiki number 2. And I find that a lot of us, we stumble upon it. Usually something's happening in our lives where we need that initial healing. But then for like a period of our lives, we kind of disconnect from it a bit where I don't know, we need to almost remember to attune back to it and to bring ourselves back to it. But that's why it's so magical what you're doing because, yeah, like everyone could have their Reiki masters, but especially if you don't apply it or practice it, it's something that we sometimes get disconnected from. And we need to remember just how magical and how important it actually is, just that source energy fueled through us and
Exactly.
to us. It's so incredible.
Wow, I love your story. It's really interesting to me that you had gone through extended periods of time before elevating into the different levels of Reiki. And what really stands out to me and what inspired me right now is just thinking of how strong our spirit is. Like the spirit that is connected with the Reiki, because when you think about it, right, we have four bodies of energy: your physical, your mental, emotional, and then your spiritual. And I think that's what we really are forgetting as like as a collective is how deeply connected and powerful our spirit is, right? And we don't have to go into this conversation, but I think growing up, a lot of us thought spirit was religion and spirit was confinement and spirit was certain rules. Like you can only be spirit if you had these rules and followed these rules, which actually it's complete, like that's complete false. Like we all have
I was going to
spirit
say
and with
bullshit, but I don't know if we're swearing yet. I agree. I agree. The fact that spirit and soul work became institutionalized, I don't know why. It's just kind of a control thing.
oh
Like
and
that's 100% a way to control and a way to also detach and disconnect all of us because we're all, and I don't want to say this right now just because there is a lot of inequality and discrimination and oppression going on in the world, but at our core, as earth beings, as humans, but also like animals, as species here on this planet, we're all interconnected. We're all one.
yeah, I was just going to say what a lack of worthiness to have your own spirit, which is literally the highest form of energy frequency you could be living in, right? And when we think of energy frequency, that could literally result in our manifestations, resulting in our money abundance, resulting in love, resulting in literally anything your heart desires. That really happens through spirit. And like you mentioned, growing up, it's a detachment of what is so true of your own freedom and your desires. No, it's all of a sudden taught as like having to live a certain way, which is
Just
disconnection from what
instills
our
like
true
so
source
much
is.
fear and so much shame into our lives. And exactly what you said, we become
Thank goodness
disconnected
you found the
from our
Reiki.
essence, from our soul. Yeah, definitely. Energy work has honestly just transformed my entire consciousness. It's elevated my frequencies. It's something I'm so grateful for.
Good. I'm so happy to hear you found the Reiki.
Me
That's what we're
too.
here for, right?
So you were doing all these health and wellness modalities prior to finding Reiki. Why? Well, I guess they were working for you to some extent, but like what was missing then?
Wow, that's such a good question. And what really was missing, and this is an interesting alignment, right? And there could be so many other factors that aligned to this awakening that I had, but I was suffering with substance abuse, and I borderline call it addiction because it was affecting relationships, it was affecting my job, it was affecting like me as a being, my physical body, mental, emotional, like it was literally deteriorating my life. I was very addicted to alcohol. I grew up even trying different types of drugs, and it wasn't an awakening spiritual type of recreational use. It was an abusive escapism, which actually caused a lot of consequences in my life. And like, I've been arrested before. Like, that's how crazy journeys have been. Like, the abuser. Like, so much darkness comes from that type of addiction. And so when I stepped into Reiki, my meditations led me to understanding how deeply rooted addiction is in my heritage and in my ancestral journeys. And then I started connecting and making sense of my childhood and realizing I was growing up with an addict, but it was not talked about. It was so hidden. So with Reiki, without anyone having to tell me anything, I was being tapped into these awakenings, these meditations. Like some of my Reiki meditations, like I had seen people and doing things, and it was very dark, but it was a level of compassion. It was a level of forgiveness, and it was a level of awareness, right? Just like we said, when we bring the truth of our spirit into awareness, that it's not confined based on a religious book. That's exactly how my addiction was feeling. I was finally aware of why this was happening, instead of me being the problem of, well, I'm just a mess, I'm a dark soul, like I'm doomed forever. No, I started just having so many answers and clarity, and it was all through peace and meditation. And it transferred it became internal healing, then transferred into my external, right? Like I started seeing this thing that I was so addicted to as an enemy, and it was no longer my friend. It was no longer my source of outlet. It was literally an enemy that I was like, I'm going to do all I can to stay away from you, which I never thought would be possible. And even saying it to this day, I'm like, being sober for as long as I was, thinking how addicted I was in that trauma and in that turmoil, it's still, for me, it's hard to even think about because it feels like a whole lifetime ago, but it wasn't. It really wasn't. It was just a year ago today. No, in January 20, I stopped. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow,
We're in 2021. So
congratulations.
you're,
I have
thank you.
goosebumps. That's such an incredible journey you've been on. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to when you started making those correlations between like ancestral karmas and energies and kind of those conditionings with kind of the stagnicity you had in your etheric body, in your energetic body, and started making those correlations. Because how do you go from saying, oh, I'm addicted to alcohol or I'm abusing substances to being like, wait, there's conditionings, there's energy behind it. This may not necessarily be me.
So, yeah, and it reminds me a lot of inner child work. It really reminds me of the habitual reactions and responses that we make as children and what we were taught. And so when I was luckily at the time, and no, because even wow, when you surround yourself around this behavior, it becomes very normalized. It becomes very, well, I have a roof over my head, I have food on my table, so life can't be that hard,
Mm.
right? Like, and then you start to doubt yourself, and you start to have shame for feeling like something still is really unhealthy and off. So that's also what I think I had to overcome, of this idea that what I was experiencing and feeling when it came to substance and alcohol was painful. And even though I still had many blessings in my life, there was still a sense of pain that I knew was not healthy and good for me. So when I had that Reiki, it was a safe space where I was able to tap into my truth without anyone else interfering and telling me what had to be true. And consecutively, I was doing my Reiki sessions with my Reiki master. And again, I was just building that strength of like, this is true. This is true. We have issues that are stemmed down from many people in our family, many ancestors, that we have to start talking about it. We have to start talking about it. Even to this day, I mean, there are still many of my loved ones who still suffer, but they see me overcoming what I was once, who I once was, and they admire and they come to me. But it takes that one person to really try to reform and create a new habit within a family. And I really believe that's what I'm here to do. Is it perfect? No. Are there many others that I wish I could help heal and show them this light that I have seen? Yes. But it really just took me having to tap into what was true with myself and knowing that there is something painful within. And you know, it all comes from your own decision making and your own self discipline. I had to decide to acknowledge that pain.
Mm.
I was lucky to have the Reiki and find that the truth was darkness within that alcohol substance that was only taking away from my
Mm.
spirit. It was only making me less of a spirit, right? We even call alcohol spirit. And I'm like, it's
Mm.
not a good spirit when it's not consumed in a healthy way, of course.
Mm.
So yeah, did that answer your question? I hope so.
It
I
did.
hope so.
It's really difficult to tap into your pain first off. Like I'm someone who I don't, honestly, I'd probably say throughout teenage years and early 20s, I was probably abusing a lot of substances as well. And in the moment, I assumed that my intention was good when I was like drinking and partying and smoking weed and doing other drugs that are illegal in Canada. So I'm not going to mention. But the intention when you look back wasn't pure. It was a coping mechanism. It was suppressing and also repressing all the pain I was feeling internally. It was just kind of escapism, just like you said. And to really attune to your pain and start making those correlations as to like what the source of the pain is, that isn't easy. It is much, much easier to find some sort of external coping mechanism that helps you just eliminate it or forget momentarily, as opposed to doing the deep inner work to try to heal that and resolve that. Because like we're not talking about pain where, I don't know, someone says something stupid to you, a stupid comment, and then that like sticks with you, even though that sticks with you sometimes. Like this is deeply rooted, especially ancestral. Like that's carried on from generations and generations. The fact that we're able to acknowledge that and become aware, like awareness is such an important first step that a lot of people are unable to do. So to first become aware and acknowledge and then take those steps to actually healing them, that's so incredible that you were able to do that and show others that light as well. But you did talk about discovering your truth. How were you able to distinguish between what is your truth, your soul's truth, as to opposed to like truths that were instilled in you by others?
I definitely am still discovering that as I continue along my journey. And what I believe was really helpful was, one, taking myself out of the environment and really being alone with myself. So I was blessed to have an opportunity to live on my own, right? I was able to live on my own, and I had to create boundaries and shut off certain relationships for a period of time. And was it painful? Of course. Did those around me understand fully? No. Did I make a lot of people upset because I was starting to talk out loud about my experiences and my truth? and bringing to light a darkness that was following many of my loved ones and myself, yeah, I was starting to bring light to it. And again, I was triggering a lot of people I love. I had to close off relationships and cancel plans. So, I mean, it took literally tuning out the world externally and internally, whether that was with boundaries, canceling plans, and really devoting myself to what feels good for me? What's going to make me happy right now? And it was interesting as I was finding these questions and answers within myself of, well, just going for a walk is going to feel good. I'd go for a walk and I'd realize there weren't many times where I went for walks as a child, like just to go for a walk. And it was just a habit or like literally the most simplistic way of just going outside for a walk around the block to look at nature, flowers. It was something that I didn't really routinely do. And so I was starting to create these new habits as an adult because, again, I decided, well, what will feel good? And I know that sounds very simplistic, but sometimes that's what really needs to happen is like starting from like the most simplistic way of how am I even going to talk to myself this morning? What's the first thing I'm going to think in the morning? Am I going to reach for my phone and start seeing what others are doing? Am I going to jump up and say, I need to start doing this right now? Or am I literally going to say, okay, I have another day to live today. What does God want me to know today? What is God going to bless me with today? And it's like once you start bringing that awareness into simplistic way of living, you start to realize how quickly and fast we've been programmed and trained to think and believe. And with that quickness, I mean, it's obvious how far we get pulled away from our most simplest truth of just existing and finding love and finding joy and like pure joy and pure love. But of course, when you slow down, you're going to start opening up those wounds. And that's where people start to get scared of uncovering because, like I said, you have to start speaking up like, oh, I'm wounded here. And that's because of an experience that happened. And then you start thinking, oh, if I talk about this experience, are other people going to get mad? Or am I going to be judged? Right. And so that's a lot of times where I didn't really want to talk about things, or you're told, oh, you think too much, you talk too much. And I'm like, but this is something that has to be uncovered, or else it's just going to sit there and build on. And when we build on something that's uncomfortable and painful, obviously it's going to manifest in pain.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I could talk about this for hours. It's quite magical when you finally uncover so much, but you have to decide for yourself and you have to start taking the steps of tuning inward. And that does look like closing off external relationships. And for a while, it doesn't have to be forever.
I resonate so heavily with that. So, yeah, I did take quite a few years in between each level of Reiki. After my Reiki level 1 attunement, I lost, which now I'm so grateful for, but I lost so many like party friends, friends that weren't at the new vibration I was attuning to. And in the moment, like I was this young, I think 18 or 19-year-old, I just wanted to have fun. I wanted to feel like I belonged. And in that moment, I thought that like my party friends, these more materialistic, more like surface level, and I don't say that in like a negative way, more just like three-dimensional, very human humans who I find like a lot collectively, there are many people like that, and that is okay. I feel like it's so beautiful to live
Yeah.
such a human experience. And sometimes I wish that I was more grounded in that sense, or I was more human,
Yes.
but I was
Yes.
losing more like dense friends. And it was, I think that was kind of my first, or maybe like my second big dark night of the soul, but I was so confused. I was like, I just did my Reiki level 1. I'm elevating into higher frequencies. I'm opening up, like I'm reconnecting to my deepest essence, my soul, my spirit. But people are not accepting that aspect of me, like the truest, most authentic part of me. People who I assumed were my friends, who I assumed I belonged to, are like feeling disconnected now and not accepting me. So that was something that was so
I would,
heavy. Yeah. And in the moment, I couldn't accept it personally. So I did go into like a little bit of like depression and anxiety after that because I hadn't found my soul group yet. I hadn't found people that were vibrating at the same frequencies as me. No one was really exploring Reiki or energy healing or even their spirit. Like all my friends wanted to do was like go out and party and drink and do drugs, which that's fine. But at the same time as I was missing that spiritual community. And I felt so alone and like so abandoned by the people I assumed I was closest to. So that was definitely a big transition. And I know, honestly, I think every spiritual person I've talked to has said they experienced some sort of like detachment from people they assumed were like family and friends that they were closest with at some point, because the new frequencies they were radiating at no longer were the same as the ones that they were radiating at before. And this is so cliche. This is something you see at like Barnes and Noble, but like your vibe really does attract your tribe. Like so cliche. But when you start elevating your personal frequencies, there is like a momentarily where you're waiting around to attract the new tribe into your life, but they will come. And I really don't think we should ever suppress or like lower our own frequencies and our own energy to try to connect with people who really aren't in alignment with our higher self and our highest good. So that was just kind of, that was my biggest struggle after Reiki level 1. And that's kind of the reason I waited so long to get Reiki level 2. I'm like, if I've already lost all my friends, I really don't want to see, like, I have like 5 people left. Like, is Reiki level 2 going to get rid of those people too? So that was kind of like, that was something I had to cope with in between the different levels, but it really is an adjustment. And I'm so grateful for it.
I'm like, whoever's listening, Reiki is still amazing. But it's so my heart for you, because I completely resonate so deeply with that, because there were times where I was so I've worked really well with anger. I've worked through anger, but I was so angry with why I wanted to be at such a high level of frequency. Why was I made this way? Why am I not able to be in dense relationships? Why can't I just enjoy this material surface level? Why can't I just laugh at things that aren't genuinely funny? Why can't I just be more like my external relationships? And it was so, I resonate deeply with that, because it was so lonely for a while. You start questioning yourself. And someone even told me, a healer that I really look up to said it's lonely at the top. And it's true, because when you are given this level of responsibility to make a very impactful resonance in this lifetime that we're here, right? Like, we literally are a gift from God's, we're chosen ones to really make an impact and make things different, as in showing people the full potential of life away from substance abuse and away from alcoholism. Like, when we think of addiction and substance abuse and alcoholism, like, there's so much potential that isn't able to be explored. And so, as much as it's sad to see certain relationships go, and experiencing those moments of being alone and feeling lonely and uncomfortable, the reason why we're really here to be elevating at this higher spiritual level is so we can show others how capable and possible and magical and beautiful that this life is, right? And so it does become beyond us, and you have to reach a certain level of understanding of this journey that I'm on. It's uncomfortable, but I know it feels right in my soul, and it's elevating me. And I have to remind myself that it's beyond me. There's something bigger in store for my journey than what I can even have planned for myself. And I'm a huge result of that. I never thought in my lifetime that I would be creating podcasts and running my own business and having soul family that are just so divinely connected to my heart, and traveling the world with them, and writing a book. Like, there's so many things that are happening, and this is like lightning speed, right? Like, this isn't like 5, 10 year goal plans. Like, these are goal plans I thought were going to be 5 to 10 year plans, and now they're like 6 months to a year, right? And it's like this journey goes quickly in the most magical, abundant, and successful way, but there is a level of having to let go. And then you just start learning, okay, how can I let that go? Remembering that there's something beyond, and there's somewhere higher that I have to be going. And it's not that, like, and I love how you mentioned too that there's no right or wrong way to be living in your frequency. Like, if that's the type of activity and the type of enjoyment you find that makes you joyful, and that's pure happiness, great, no judgment. But there's something, it's hard for me to believe that that is pure joy. I really believe that tapping into that pureness does take a lot of work, and it does take being alone to find that purity. So I do think you have to go through this feeling of aloneness and detachment and letting go to really get to that purity of one's soul.
And yeah, I just want to emphasize that it is a journey, like you mentioned. I've let go of so much, but at the same time, there's still so much growth that still needs to be done. There's so much that needs to be explored still. I think Reiki for me was so foundational in reconnecting with myself and my essence and allowing me to let go of what was no longer serving me, to be able to attract and manifest all that abundance that I know I always knew deep down I was able to achieve. I just wasn't radiating at the frequencies that weren't in alignment with my goals and ambitions yet. And it's so interesting you say that because once you actually attune to the perfect frequencies, you start manifesting, like the universe starts like throwing all these amazing experiences and opportunities into your life. Like what you were saying, what I assumed would be a lifelong goal, it's happening right now. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, okay, slow down, universe. Like, but then you start acknowledging that, wow, there's even more to what I envisioned for myself. There's more that I can't even conceptualize yet, just awaiting me. And that excites me so much. But for me, Reiki really was attuning back to me, attuning to my purest, most authentic self. And somewhere in the process of life, all those conditionings and imprints and inauthentic relationships kind of got in the way and kind of detached me from my soul. But that rediscovery of self is something it's just so imperative to our growth and development. And it's something that's so, so pure. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. It's worth every
I love
dark
it.
night of the soul and every pain that I experience.
Well, I like that you use the word pure because that's literally what Reiki is. It's a level of energy that is pure joy, pure healing, pure peace. That's and pure love. It's a divine love that that humans aren't able to provide one another. It's a divine love that is given to you through spiritual consciousness, through the Reiki attunement, or from the Reiki master if you're doing a session. It is a divine, pure love that does not exist with the flesh. It has to be given through that Reiki attunement when you're connecting with spirit or that spiritual connection with your Reiki master. And I think that's what makes people so hooked to the Reiki, right? Like so hooked to the Reiki because again, it's a divine love you never really experience until that moment.
So let's talk about Reiki. I feel like we've like briefly been mentioning it, but we haven't really got into the depth of what Reiki is. So do you remember the first time you experienced receiving Reiki? Like, what did that feel like to you?
I'm like, I probably experienced Reiki so many times, but I didn't understand that I was experiencing the Reiki. But when I actually sat down through a meditation from Reiki, I literally felt my body just getting really warm. And then I kind of just started like thinking, okay, when is it like, is it, am I feeling it? Is this happening? Well, my body's getting warm, but maybe I'm just warm, right? And then you don't really start noticing the Reiki taking effect until you're like and then sleep just started happening and I just started sleeping a lot more. But then it just started manifesting into ways of the way I thought, the way I felt. I just started speaking up more and I started it just who I wanted to be started radiating. So during the Reiki sessions, I knew something was happening, but I couldn't really put a finger to it. And so instead of thinking, oh, that doesn't really work, right? Because as humans, we're so conditioned. Like we go to the gym, great, I'm sore. Because I'm sore, I know I got a good workout in. I'm sweating, so I know I got a good workout in. I can flex my arms and I know I did something. But when it comes to the Reiki and the energetics, it's like, okay, I'm going to trust and I'm going to be honest. Am I showing up differently? Am I looking at things differently? Am I feeling differently? Am I resting, right? Like, am I actually receiving a sense of peace? So it's like being mindful of like, what do you even want from the Reiki? You can't come to the Reiki teacher and expect her to solve all your problems. Like, you have to be that free will and decide, I'm coming to the Reiki because of this and being honest with yourself. And then once you decide, starting to tap back into that. Do you notice your life shifting? So I would say that was my first experience with Reiki, desperately needing healing and noticing that my life was starting to transform bit by bit
Mm.
and a lot of sleep, a lot of sleep, a lot of sleep.
Yeah, I don't really remember my first Reiki session. But I know as a practitioner, I always set the intention that it be for my client's highest good, whatever that may be. If they're not ready to receive like full, deep healing yet, I hope that they receive the healing that they need for their highest good at this present moment. And I think that was kind of my intention during my initial Reiki receiving as well. Like, I didn't quite know what to expect. I didn't know if I would feel anything. I just remember kind of lying there and being like, kind of like you, I'm like, okay, warmth. And am I supposed, like, is my hand supposed to shake? Or, just, I'm like, am I seeing things, or is it just like my mind making up images? Like, but over time, again, based on what your needs are in that moment, I feel like a lot of the receiving I got was, like, for example, when I had to reconnect with like my physical body because I felt detached from my physical form, it was a remembrance of my connection to earth. And like experiences like that would come up when I had to do past life healing. Sometimes I would have like visions or remembrances of past lives that I experienced. So it's always like whenever I still receive healing, I do variety of energy work, not just Reiki, but it's always for my highest good in that moment. It's what I need to receive in that moment. And I trust that the energy I'm receiving is helping in the way that I need. I never go in with the intention of wanting more than what I'm ready to receive.
I love that you mentioned the past life because I remember so vividly. I was starting to just connect to my past life during probably like my seventh or eighth Reiki session. And it was so uncomfortable and it was so scary because it was, of course, it came from a traumatic place. I mean, many of us come from ancestral lineage that is trauma based. And it's just trusting in that divine guidance. So I like that you mentioned it was about connecting to that higher self and the highest good. And of course, knowing that the journey of your healing. So any Reiki practitioners listening, like it's truly about your client's experience. It's really not about you. So there's no needing to question, did I do it right? Am I doing it right? It's all just connecting back to the higher good of your client and knowing that the Reiki is going to do its work and the energy work and healing is going to happen. So I would agree that I definitely bring in different energy work into my practice. But Reiki is such a foundational tool that is, again, just pure love and consciousness to really get that person to that level of awareness so they can be present again and be able to connect back to that ancestral healing and past life healing and creating those clear visions of manifestation because that's what we're here to do, enjoy life and live in this peace and joyful world that God's gifted us in Mother Nature, right? And you mentioned connecting deeper to nature. When I did my Holy Fire Reiki attunement, such an incredible experience. Have you done Holy Fire before?
No. Can you explain what that is?
So, Holy Fire, you receive one symbol in the Master Attunement. And once you become Holy Fire attuned, it's again very deep, deep cleansing or empowering. So, it's cleansing out blockages within the body, spirit, energy, right? Any of the energies, or it's really empowering something that you're looking to achieve. And when that empowerment happens, again, the Holy Fire Reiki cleanses whatever's blocking us. And the Holy Fire Reiki, when I finished it, I took a walk in nature and then I started seeing animals in trees and in front of me. And then I was able to tap back into like spirit animals. And then I started talking to spirit animals and being guided. And I was going through such a traumatic heartbreak at that time. And I had went up to Humboldt, Eureka, and I remember being in this forest and I was so devastated in my pain that was inescapable. And I saw this lion, this beautiful lioness, and I heard her roaring in a bush in front of me. And I was like, this is not like, is this happening? Because like you still question it, especially at the beginning, you question like, am I crazy? What's happening? And when I tapped in and I just allowed it to be present, I saw myself as that leader, that powerful lioness woman who is here to leave her mark and be strong in the journey that she is on. And it was remarkable. So
So
Holy Fire is really
I need
cool.
to step in. When I was at my one of my lowest points, I connect so deeply with nature and animals, and I got a reassurance from a lion, which I actually have tattooed on me because that was my
Yes.
spirit animal that came forth at a time where I needed to remember that I am a leader. I was placed on this earth to make such incredible change and progression collectively. And yeah, it was just a remembrance. And she appeared and she stuck with me for many, many years. So I got her tattooed on me.
Yes. Can I add to that too of saying like I see you being such an incredibly powerful being on earth who is leading her community. And I just want, again, who's ever listening, if you feel that you're here to lead, there is room for all of us, like room
Mm.
for every single one of us. And that truly is, I mean, you can talk to any astrologer that you'd like, but that is literally where we're transitioning into. We see a lot of large entities starting to deteriorate and showing and proving that they're not trustworthy. And that is okay. It's okay to let large entities go and tap back into your purity and what brings you joy. And then finding that tribe and knowing that we all have such strong roles in leading our community. And of course, we get to connect through social media with other like-minded leaders, like I found connecting with you, and that lioness synchronicity of like you are the lioness who's like leading her tribe in that fierce
And
strong
you
way. And of
are
course,
too.
right, like we've been through our dark, we've been through heavy stuff, but it's also we can be a better leader and fulfill our role. So again, like we all have a role here, we all have a role here, and there's room for every single one of us. And may we just see people as manifestation goals, or may we see others as manifestation don'ts, right? Like every single person you come in contact with is, especially in this time we're in, like everyone here is either going to be someone that you want to manifest into. Like, yes, I see that woman living in that sacred space, right? Like she has luscious green everywhere, right? Like I'm sitting in my space and I'm grateful for it. But of course, there's like more manifestations I want, right? Like I want the beach right in front of me. So it's like being able to see others in a manifested way instead of, I can never get there or that person's better. Like, no, that person's in front of you. So you can elevate your consciousness into your higher manifestation, or that's something I do not want to be. So what can I be instead? Like we're all here really for one another. And going back to what you mentioned of we're all one, it is so, so true. So true. So
Oh,
cheers to
I
you and your
love
role.
that. I love that. I agree though. And I think we all kind of go through an experience as well where we feel kind of like lack of, where we are constantly comparing ourselves to others, especially other people who are basically doing the exact same thing as us. And we watch others succeed, or I don't know, falsely promote that they're succeeding because there is a lot of like manipulation happening. And at the same time, when you're in a place where you're still discovering your truth and your journey and your purpose here on earth, it's sometimes, yeah, you feel like kind of like a lack of, like you're not able to measure up yet, that maybe tuning into your purpose won't ever bring you all the abundance that you desire. And that isn't true. And I do find the more I connect, like I'm so grateful for this podcast to be able to like connect with such like-minded, elevated, beautiful souls, because you guys like, I don't know, I feel like my frequency becomes more elevated each time I connect with each one of you. It just shows that we could all coexist and collaborate with one another and all succeed and all reach levels of abundance that we know we're able to reach. Like there's no competitiveness, there's enough. Like the universe is so grand. There are enough resources for all of us here. And I don't know at what point in humanity, in the progression of humanity, we forgot that and we felt disconnected and separated from one another, because it should never be that way. But I think with Age of Aquarius and just collective elevation in general, we are reaching a point where we're realizing that, where we're realizing we are better in unity. And when we are better when we promote equality, as opposed to being very separate from one another and very selfish. So that's something I'm noticing. It's something like I cherish community and I cherish connection, especially at the frequencies I'm at right now. I find that everyone I'm interacting with and connecting with are just such beautiful beings. Like I want them in my life. I don't want to be competing with them in any way. And I want them to succeed. Like
Yeah.
I want my
Yeah.
friends, I want the people I connect with to succeed.
And that's it. When you mentioned where in society did this lack mindset come from, and that's, if you think of it in a simplistic energetic standpoint, is that's a dark energy. That's a dark way of living and thinking of lack exists. So by structuring whatever entities on this idea of lack mindset, like that's just darkness right there. And I don't want any part of that. I'm going to go to that light side, because obviously if we're feeling like we're in a lack mindset, and most of us were taught that you have to work really, really hard over and over again to have all this money, like that makes me feel like I'm not good enough and that there isn't enough money, or I have to do a certain amount of things in order to have the money. So that makes me feel lack. That doesn't have to exist anymore. You can be that light and believe in the abundance and really believe that, again, the money's infinite. The whatever it is you want is endless and infinite, right? And so that's really where I'm grateful that this, again, like you mentioned, the age of Aquarius, it's really coming into this being an energetic frequency now. Like, I'm going to choose light. I'm going to choose abundance. I'm going to choose success. I'm going to choose cheering one another on. I'm going to choose my truth, right? And that's, again, what Reiki really helps us do, tap back into our truth, because the Reiki energy, if anyone's still confused of Reiki, I mean, the Reiki energy is literally here to cleanse your physical body, your mental body, and your emotional body, to tap back into that spiritual body. And then when you get into Holy Fire Master training, that attunement is also targeting your spirit. So Holy Fire Master Reiki practitioners know how to undergo and lead spiritual attachment cleansings, right? And so that can be really heavy for people. When you start to be when you're in a room or a house and you feel like you're always sick in that room, that could be a spiritual attachment that is there in the space. That could be a dark energy that you're breathing into. And so of course it's going to give you signals and signs of you're being sick. But again, that could also be a spiritual attachment. So the Reiki is really good at like cleansing what is not ours, so we can tap back into what is ours, and then have that sense of light where abundance exists, because I get to decide every single day what is true. One day I may wake up and have this thought, the next day I might have something else. And again, it's an infinite form of life and living, and the humanity of having a soul here on earth. This flesh is so much more beyond this flesh, right? There's so much more beyond the flesh of what we live in. And full circle, our spirit is truly like one of the highest vibrational places we can live in. And that's why I choose to be on the light team and devote my life to Reiki and getting people to really connect back into their own spirit so they can see this light life if they choose.
That was so beautiful. Wow, I'm like
You are so
mesmerized
sweet.
by your words.
You are so sweet. Thank you.
I absolutely agree though. And I think before I started exploring different modalities of energy healing, like I do pranic, I do crystal healing as well. I've looked into like shamanism and explored that a little bit. So there's so many different modalities, and I recommend everyone explore what feels right and what aligns with them. But Reiki, there was something so foundational about it. Just being able to detach from, like, I've had my fair share of attachments, spiritual attachments that I've brought back from like astral travels, or just even being in physical spaces, being unaware that there was a spiritual presence there. Just I've had my fair share of attachments. I've had etheric cords connecting me to certain people and certain experiences, just heaviness and stagnant energy. Reiki allows you to release all of that and allows you to reconnect with your core, with your essence, with your soul. And even if you feel like maybe you've evolved past the healing of Reiki into new modalities of healing, that's okay. But I don't know, something about Reiki as a foundation for energy healing and just for reconnection with yourself. I don't know, I'm forever grateful for finding Reiki and yeah, just rediscovering who I was at my core, at my essence, and then being able to explore what felt right and what felt in alignment with my higher vibrations now. It's been so transformational personally for me.
Yeah. And did you notice too with the Reiki, did you notice like your psychic gifts or your spiritual gifts and your intuition like
Enhanced.
strengthening?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell people too when they're like, I feel like I have gifts, but I don't know what they are. And I'm like, do the Reiki. Do the Reiki and keep believing in yourself. It's all gonna make sense. It will all make sense. But again, it's the self-doubt we have to overcome, and that's why we get to be together and reflect with one another, right? And be each other's cheerleaders. Like, you're amazing. Of course you're amazing. There's no other option for you. Like, you are just simply amazing because you exist. Like, that is the most beautiful thing about this life. It's like, blessed are the ones breathing. Tupac Shakur, any fans? I love
We love
Tupac.
him.
Yes, good. But it's so true. It's, we just gotta, I was about to start quoting him and rapping. Like, we gotta change the way we treat each other, the way we eat, like bringing in that Reiki to really enhance your God-given gifts. And it really connected me deeper to God too, which I'm forever grateful for. Wow, I did not know how to give myself grace, compassion, or forgiveness. And if I don't give myself grace, compassion, or forgiveness, I'm not going to give it to
To
others.
others, yeah.
And what a grumpy way to live, right? So thank you, Reiki.
Wait, I'm interested now. What gifts did it awaken in you?
I feel so exposed when I talk about these gifts.
I'll
Like,
share
if you see me
mine.
right now, I'm like, I'm like covering myself with my jacket. So yeah, no, go ahead. I'd love to hear your gifts too. Okay, I'll go first.
Yeah. There's
So
so
with the
many. I don't
Reiki,
know what Reiki actually like instigated. Like they were always there. That's the thing. It's not like Reiki just like brought about these new gifts. They always existed within
exactly.
us. But yeah, we
Yes.
just reconnected with them.
Yes. Well, one, I was able to really tap into energies, right? Like, I was really allowed to tap myself into if people were experiencing jealousy, anger. Like, it was a lot of dark energies too, which is so interesting now that I think about it. Because when you're doing the Reiki work, you tap into someone's dark place, but it makes sense because you're shining light on the dark. So many people see the Reiki practitioners and they see us like being all high vibe, so spiritual and happy and blissed out. But if you're actually in sessions, like, I've had someone scream from the top of her lungs in my Reiki session. And I was like, right? Like, in your Reiki courses, you learn to just allow your client to have an experience. If it goes past 15 minutes, and of course you check in. But within, like, after her scream, I stopped and I said, are you ready to keep going? Because people don't realize the type of frequencies that you step into during the healing. So I would say that I was really able to stay calm and peaceful when it was chaotic. Because when it was chaotic, my emotions before Reiki, oh, I was just like so overwhelmed. I'd cry, I would scream, I didn't know what to do with myself, or I'd go drink, right? And so once I had that Reiki, I was able to be so peaceful and calm during chaos. And it was, again, one of my gifts is to really help like manage and bring peace and light into the chaos instead of adding to it or running from it. Other gifts. So this is a little crazy too. I want anyone to think that if they're not seeing things that they're failing, but I'm starting to see auras. I see a lot of colors, a lot of colors around people. And that happened again after my master training. I started seeing auras and I was able to tap into my aura, tap into others if they asked. And then seeing a lot of spirit, knowing when spirit's here. And I don't really, I'm starting to tap into this gift of like mediumship, and I do find myself stepping away from it because I don't know if I fully want to embody that yet. Like, and that's great too. Like, I don't have to feel bad about that decision because we all have free will. But as I stepped into another master course, now I'm starting to hear and talk to spirit. But again, it's not scary because I decide, no, we're not doing that right now. No, that's not happening today. Or no, it's bedtime. I'm going to bed. You're not welcomed anymore, right? And luckily, this type of experience with myself and spirit work has prepared me to work with clients with this pandemic going on and this interesting, very devastating virus that's attacking many homes. I want people to understand too that there's a very dark entity attached to that virus. And it's okay that you start seeing negative spirit and dark spirit in your home after the virus has entered into the home. And if that is you, understanding that you are allowed to tell spirit to go away. You're allowed to bring light into the space through prayer, through sage, and through your authority of, you are not welcomed here. Only light, love, and kindness is allowed in my home. And I mean, it's worked ever since. So
We could
those
have
are a
a
few of
whole
my gifts.
episode on entities that we've seen ever since beginning our Reiki journey because, wow, I could go on for hours about that topic. Hours.
Yeah.
That's, I agree. I think we sometimes forget just how powerful we are as humans and as powerful as our souls are when it comes to interacting with other beings. We like the amount of 3 a.m. visits I've received from certain beings. I'm like, listen, I'm just trying to sleep. please leave my space. This is my home, not yours. You're not welcome right now. Both good or like high vibrational and low vibrational. I've said it to both because, it's my space, especially if you're not ready to connect with them. You don't need to. Or maybe you just don't ever want to. But yeah, that was after my Reiki level 1. I started like astral traveling. And I think this is stuff that I've done throughout my life, but I gained awareness of what I was doing now. So astral traveling and bringing back like dark entities with me from the places I traveled to, because we forget just how beautiful Earth is. In this grand multiverse, there are so many planets and star systems that have inhabitable places where other beings are living on right now, and they want to come back to Earth. Like, Earth is such a beautiful place. Who wouldn't want to live here? So I've brought so many attachments back with me. First of all, recognizing that a lot of, especially like patterns, repeated patterns that I had weren't actually mine. It was either energy from people, like humans that I interacted with in this lifetime or past lifetimes, or it was the energy of dark attachments that I somehow brought back with me from like traveling. And that was definitely a gift that was activated. I still astral travel, but like I usually set the intention to do it as opposed to like falling asleep and then traveling at night, which I don't really do anymore. But mediumship was definitely something that came up after my level 2. I would just have spirits visiting me in the middle of the night, both good and bad, but they would just like basically like unfinished business. They would want me to communicate something or help them with something. And I'm like, I don't feel like that is my role. I don't feel like that will ever be my role. I didn't feel connected with doing that and with fulfilling that. So that was something too I learned. You don't actually, just because like spirits or even humans approach you asking for some sort of assistance, we're not really obligated. It has to feel right. It has to feel aligned with us. And as much as I want to help every single being, living and dead, navigate their circumstances, sometimes we're not in the right place to do that ourselves.
And
So
even in the human
mediumship was definitely a big one. And I feel like that definitely comes up for a lot of people who get attuned to any type of energy modality. But the biggest one, and honestly the one I'm most grateful for, is just feeling energy, being able to, like when I tune into other people's fields, the fact that I know what's my energy and what belongs to others, that's something that even just a few years ago, I was unable to distinguish. I am so attuned to my personal frequencies that right away, wherever I go, I know what's not mine. And that's something I'm so like, that's a gift I'm so honored to have.
Yes.
And that's definitely the biggest one. And just to feel blockages in other people, to feel resistance in other people, and to like help them navigate that, help them release some of that. That's something, again, so grateful to be able to do that.
And again, I mean, it's such a beautiful full circle. It's like when you're able to understand and distinguish the difference between what energies is someone else and what energies is yours, what a high level of empowerment and freedom to be who you want to be and not let anyone else tell you who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. Because just like you have the power to tell spirit, not today, that's not happening, or that's not my role, I can't help all spirits that come to me, you deserve that peace in your life. And that's also what we deserve as humans when we see and we're told by other humans what our role is. Like, let me tap into my truth so I can fulfill my role here and not feel the pressures of having to do and say and be and believe what everyone else is telling me to be and do. Because then that just creates a detachment, and nothing blossoms from detachment. It doesn't exist if something is detached, right? Like, you have to be attached to yourself to blossom. And I believe I want that for all of us. We all deserve it. We all deserve it. So good for you for
Thank
reaching
you.
that level.
So, any final truths you want to share with everyone?
My final truths for everyone is to remind them and just share that you do all have a purpose here, and continue to tap into yourself to find that purpose. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Asking for help to those that you admire, really those that you admire. I learned that lesson I went for help to those that weren't living the life that I really wanted to. And yet I was going through this vicious cycle. And so there is always, 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 always a solution, always a solution. And that's one of my biggest mantras. There is always a solution. So keep discovering your gifts and asking for help.
Oh, thank you, Alyssa, for being here. This was such a beautiful conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
If you feel enlightened and inspired by the intuition age, I would be eternally grateful if you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. This platform truly allows me to act as a catalyst for expanding and elevating human consciousness, both individually and collectively. All shares, downloads, and subscribes help me distribute these divine topics to even more conscious souls. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you at the next episode.